I stood in front of the locked garage door, invitation still in hand, wondering if my own parents had really meant to seat me here, or just hope I wouldn't come at all. The wind off the coast bit at my ears, a biting reminder of how far I'd driven through the December chill just to be treated like I didn't belong. I had left my apartment at noon, hoping an early arrival might allow me to sidestep the awkwardness I knew was waiting. But nothing could have prepared me for this. The driveway was already packed with expensive cars, all gleaming under the gray sky, and the mansion bustled with staff moving trays, floral arrangements, and golden balloons that spelled out 35 years. I tightened my coat around myself, ignoring the way my fingers trembled. Not from cold, at least not just that. A year ago, I wouldn't have come. But after months of silence, Chloe's email had arrived like a neat little lifeline, an invitation. "Come home," it said. "It's important for Mom and Dad." I walked up the stone steps, pushed open the front door, and stepped into a warm, fragrant world that felt like someone else's memory. The scent of roasted lamb and cinnamon candles filled the air, overlaid with the high-pitched clinking of champagne glasses and soft jazz. A cluster of women I didn't recognize turned and glanced at me, then looked away, their laughter barely pausing. The hallway was empty, the living room beyond it bursting with life. I spotted Chloe near the fireplace, radiant in emerald silk, her hair curled into effortless waves. She caught my eye, briefly, and then looked down, fiddling with her bracelet. I waited. 1 beat. 2. No one approached. No one asked who I was looking for. The living room looked full, uncomfortably so. Every armchair was occupied, every corner filled with chatter. A waiter passed by with a tray, nearly brushing my coat. I stepped back. Then Chloe appeared, her perfume hitting me before her voice. "Oh, Nora, you're early." Yeah, I said. I thought I'd say hi before things got crowded. She tilted her head, smile perfectly polite. "Right. Actually, I've got the perfect spot for you. It's quieter. You always liked quiet, didn't you?" Something in her tone felt rehearsed, like she'd practiced it in the mirror. Still, I followed her down the hallway, past the den and through the side door that led into the garage. The door creaked as she pushed it open. Inside was a round plastic table and 4 folding chairs. A punch bowl sat in the corner, half filled with warm lemonade. The floor was bare concrete. A single string of fairy lights blinked along the far wall, their wires taped down sloppily. The air was cold, the AC clearly busted, and the space reeked faintly of old paint. Chloe smiled again. "I thought you'd prefer this over all the noise. I'll have someone bring you a plate, okay?" I blinked. "This is where I'm sitting?" "It's just temporary. We had more RSVPs than expected." She waved a hand dismissively, like this was an unavoidable inconvenience. "You understand." Before I could reply, she was already halfway back to the house. The door shut with a soft thud behind her. I stood for a long moment, unsure whether to sit or leave. My coat was still on, my hands deep in the pockets. Eventually, I pulled out the folding chair and sat, the cold plastic biting into my thighs through my skirt. The silence was heavy, broken only by muffled laughter from inside. After 10 minutes, I tried texting Mom. "Hi, Mom. I'm here. Am I supposed to stay in the garage?" No reply. 15 minutes passed. Still no plate. No one came. I got up and tested the door handle. It didn't budge. I tried again, rattling it harder. Locked. From the outside. I let out a short, bitter laugh. Of course. They used to say I was too sensitive as a child. Maybe that was their way of preparing me for exile. Maybe they thought if they ignored me long enough, I'd disappear. I sat back down. The fairy lights buzzed softly. From the main room, a wave of laughter erupted. Then applause. Someone must have started the speeches. I wasn't even told they were beginning. I opened my phone and pulled up the seating chart Chloe had sent last week. I hadn't looked closely before, just assumed my name was buried somewhere among the RSPVS. I zoomed in, scanning each table. Table 1, Table 2, table 3. My heart began to race. Then I saw it. There was no Nora anywhere, not a middle name, not an initial, not even at the kids' table tucked near the foyer. I opened my phone, scrolled to the seating chart Chloe sent me. My name isn't on it. Turns out the patio everyone was so proud of was funded with the savings I sent Dad for his knee surgery. I remember the first transfer like it happened yesterday. June 2020. I had just cut back my hours at the bookstore to pick up a remote contract position. More stable income, less standing time, better pay. I was proud of that pivot, and Dad had just mentioned in a rare phone call that his knee was acting up again. The next week, I wired $5,000. The memo line said, "For surgery. Take care of yourself." He didn't reply. Not even a "got it." Mom emailed the next day, short and vague. "Thanks for the help. We'll use it wisely." I believed her. The second transfer came that winter. Another $5,000. Dad had slipped on ice. Needed urgent evaluation, she said. I didn't even hesitate. I lived in a tiny one-bedroom above a laundromat, the ceiling chipped from old leaks, but I figured family comes first. Always had. Always should. The third and final wire happened in early 2022. Mom's message had been full of ellipses, her version of being emotional. "We may need to look at surgery options. This year's been tough." I remember skipping my own dental appointment to make it work. $15,000 in total. Nearly every cent of my emergency fund. It wasn't until I saw the video on Chloe's social media that I realized something was wrong. It had popped up on my feed uninvited. Probably because someone tagged me in a comment I didn't see. A polished highlight reel. Champagne flutes clinking, string lights glowing against soft jazz, perfectly arranged appetizers floating past laughing guests in tailored dresses. The caption read, "Chloe Ellison Brand Launch Party. So grateful for our gorgeous backyard space. Blessed Jar Ellison style." The patio caught my eye immediately. It wasn't the cracked cement slab I remembered from childhood. This one was sleek, expansive, covered with custom-built benches and a pergola twined with fairy lights. Even the ground had changed. Flagstones imported, possibly limestone. I paused the video, staring at the glistening surface. I counted the matching outdoor lounge sets. 6. The string lights, the cocktail cart. I knew exactly how much all of that cost, because years ago I'd priced it for a friend's wedding. I blinked at the screen, heart thudding. My parents had told me the money went to house repairs. I had imagined leaky roofs, termite treatment, bathroom updates. Not this. I went digging, scrolled through old emails, found one from Mom dated February 2022. "We used the extra for something beneficial to the whole family. Chloe will finally be able to host events again. You know how important that is for her branding." I had read it before, but the weight of those words never landed until now. I leaned back in my chair, the silence of my apartment thick with rage and shame. My savings had bought Chloe's party. My sacrifice had turned into polished limestone and matching centerpieces. I'd spent years rationing groceries, postponing car maintenance, skipping vacations, just so Chloe could sip champagne on the set of her own career highlight reel. I closed the laptop, tried not to throw it. That week, I said nothing. I told myself it didn't matter anymore. The money was gone, and they were family. There had to be a reason. A misunderstanding. Maybe Dad really did plan the surgery and something came up. Maybe he'd postponed it. But when I called home a few days later just to test the waters, Dad answered. I asked about his knee. He chuckled. "Oh, it's still acting up. But you know me. I get by." No mention of surgery, no hint of gratitude, no awareness of how those 3 wires might have changed my year, my life. A part of me cracked that day. Not enough to leave, not enough to raise hell, but enough to start writing things down. The next time I saw the patio in person, it was at the anniversary party. Same string lights, same clinking glasses. Chloe floated past in another designer dress, accepting compliments like royalty. I stood near the back edge of the gathering, clutching a glass of something bubbly and tasteless. A woman with expensive teeth and a chunky emerald ring leaned toward another guest and said, "This patio?" "Oh, it's Chloe's vision. She paid for everything. So chic." I smiled silently, blood pounding in my ears. The lie was so smooth, so widely accepted that correcting it would have felt like madness. I didn't know. But they did, and that's how they used my money. I dropped the glass out of shock when Chloe called me our sentimental cousin, and no one helped me clean it up. The word echoed in my chest like a slap. Cousin, not sister. Not even distant relative. Cousin. Like I'd always hovered on the edge of the family. Too awkward, too different to count as one of them. My hand had jerked involuntarily, and the champagne flute slipped from my fingers, shattering against the stone tiles near my folding chair. Every head turned. A collective hush swept across the patio, like the moment before thunder. I stared at the glittering shards, trying not to breathe too loud, willing myself to disappear. No one moved. Chloe's voice continued, smooth and unshaken. She was telling a story about her branding journey, weaving in snippets about resilience and women lifting women, with occasional nods to our parents seated in the front row. The word cousin hadn't even caught in her throat. I wasn't worth a pause. I crouched down, picking up the jagged glass with the stiff paper napkin I'd tucked in my lap. It tore quickly, leaving wet streaks on my hands and knees. I didn't dare ask for help. I knew better by now. A waiter passed by, glanced down, and then kept walking. I sat back in my chair, slowly, breath shallow. The table I'd been placed at sat a full 20 feet from the main reception area, right next to the portable toilet and partially obscured by a decorative hedge. A few other guests sat at my table, mostly friends of friends, polite strangers who avoided eye contact once they realized no one else seemed to acknowledge me. The only time anyone really looked my way was to wince. Earlier that evening, I'd tried to find a spot for a family photo. The photographer had taken 5 shots before I noticed I was cropped out of every single one. In one, my shoulder made the edge. In another, my hand hovered mid-wave behind an ant's enormous fascinator. By the third try, Chloe said gently, "Nora, sweetie, would you mind stepping aside so we can get one of just the immediate family?" Immediate. I remembered her exact tone, like she was swatting away a fly but trying to do it with grace. Now, watching the sparkle of broken glass fade into the sunset, I wondered how much of this had always been the plan. Was the garage a spontaneous insult? Or had it been chosen in advance? Like this table, like the guest list, like every moment of humiliation choreographed with a smile? A little girl in a tulle dress ran past and stopped near my chair. She tilted her head and asked, "Why are you sitting here alone?" I stared at her, unsure whether to laugh or cry. Her mother called her name and she skipped away, leaving the question to throb in the air behind her. "Because I didn't leave earlier," I whispered to myself. More speeches followed. Chloe made a toast. Mom stood next, recounting stories of the daughter I'm most proud of, her voice cracking with rehearsed emotion. The crowd sighed and clapped. Dad nodded solemnly. I sat in silence, the only sound around me the soft hum of the portable toilet's generator. A waiter refilled everyone's glasses. Everyone except mine. It was almost dark when my mother finally walked by, trailing the hem of her gown like a queen. She didn't stop when she passed my table. Didn't even slow down. Her eyes landed briefly on the drying puddle beneath my feet. The evidence of my momentary shock. The mess I hadn't dared explain. And then she looked away. No greeting. No nod. No, "How are you?" Just a pivot on her heel and an even stride forward. That was when something in me shifted. I pressed both hands flat against the table to steady myself. The noise from the party faded into a background murmur. My heart beat steadily. No longer hurt, just resolute. I looked at the people around me one last time. their faces shining under string lights they didn't know I had partly paid for. And then I decided to stand up. And for the first time, I walked out of the party before it ended. ChatGPT Jan Noi, Toi Kong Ve Tai Trong. I lay Chico Kung Ho Bang Bak Ma Chloe Jakamvao laptop, Kua Trolley. The valet line curled around the driveway, laughter spilling out into the dark like oil on water. High heels clicked across stone, champagne glasses clinked, someone shouted for a rideshare, and in the swirl of it all, no one noticed that I wasn't standing in line. I ducked around the side of the mansion, boots crunching over gravel, breath clouding in the frigid coastal air. My heart wasn't racing. Not yet. There was a strange calm in my chest, like something inside me had gone still. As the kitchen door creaked open, I slipped back into the house I had just walked out of. The scent of garlic and wine still clung to the air. Inside, caterers stacked empty trays, while two bartenders argued over an unopened crate of bitters. None of them paid me any attention. I looked like I belonged in the margins anyway. Past the swinging door was the prep room, the one with the long stainless steel island where Chloe's assistant had been camped out earlier, clicking away at a slim black laptop. She had called it her command center during one of the speeches, half joking while tapping at slides on a screen. Now she was slumped in a chair, head tipped back against the cabinets, fast asleep with a blanket pulled over her legs. The laptop was still open. And there it was. A silver USB drive, small, sleek, almost like a novelty pen cap, plugged in at the side. I hesitated for just a breath. Then I stepped forward, careful not to make a sound, reached out, and slid it free. She didn't stir. It was light in my hand. Innocuous. But I remembered Chloe returning to it over and over again during the early hours of the party, checking drafts, rearranging lines, syncing something to a cloud folder. I'd caught glimpses of file names when I passed her in the hallway. Narrative, run-of show, Fall 23. The kind of files that sounded curated, controlled. 10 minutes later, I was in my car, hands shaking slightly as I pulled away from the Ellison estate. The string lights in the backyard still glowed behind me like a bad dream. I didn't go home right away. I drove to the overlook near the old lighthouse, where the cell reception was spotty, but the silence was complete. I parked beneath a crooked pine tree, pulled out my beat-up laptop from the passenger seat, and connected the drive. It loaded fast. Folders popped up in neat order. Narrative, final slides, speech drafts, media packages, talk points, garage.docs. My breath hitched. Garage? I clicked it open, expecting something vague. But the document was short, deliberate, a bullet list. The second line said, "If she shows up, keep her in the garage. Let her have her moment. It'll make her leave quicker." I stared at that line, my hands cold. Did they plan that? The words blurred and reformed, stark in their cruelty. Let her have her moment. Like I was some performance art. Like being cast out, isolated, was part of a carefully designed arc Chloe had choreographed for maximum pity, or applause. Other notes were just as cutting. Mention her sentimentality if asked. Makes it harder for her to claim neglect. Assign someone to distract mom if she starts oversharing. Nora brings out the worst guilt in her. Never put her name on slides. Just say a family member. I leaned back, trying to steady my breathing. My hands had started to tingle. This wasn't just a cold shoulder. This was methodical, scripted. They had rehearsed my erasure. The garage seat wasn't an accident. It was the plan. For years, I thought I was being overly sensitive, that I was reading into silences, exaggerating the chill of family gatherings. But this wasn't silence. This was strategy. I stared at the drive in my palm, its sleek surface catching moonlight through the windshield. It wasn't legal evidence. Not yet. But it was the first piece of the puzzle. The first time I could say with certainty, this wasn't an oversight. It was a plan. I hadn't heard from Tessa Green in 5 years. Her message came 3 hours after I posted the patio photo online. I didn't intend to start a war. I just couldn't sleep. It was 3:14 a.m. when I opened my Facebook account, clicked on the add photo icon, and uploaded the image I'd taken at the party. A wide shot of the illuminated patio, the polished flagstones glowing under string lights, with Chloe in the background toasting a guest. The caption was simple: built on someone else's savings. No hashtags, no tags, just truth, bare and undeniable. I turned off my phone and tried to rest. When I woke 4 hours later, it had already begun. There were 43 comments, dozens of likes, 5 private messages, one from a girl I hadn't spoken to since high school, asking if I was okay. Another from an old coworker. I always thought your sister was shady. But the message that stopped me cold was from an email address I hadn't seen in years. From Tessa Green. Subject: read it. Call me. I can help. Sent at 6:41 a.m. Tessa Green. My college roommate, my late-night ramen partner, the girl who once drafted fake contracts in our dorm just to get out of gym class. We had laughed endlessly about legal loopholes, mocked campus disputes, and once made a pact to open a nonprofit together. Her law, me communications. Then life happened. Internships, moves, graduation, and a quiet fade out, like so many college friendships. Now, she was reaching out. We met at a coffee shop just after 10. I wore a hoodie and jeans, hoping to blend in, but Tessa spotted me instantly. She looked sharper than I remembered. Sleek blazer, bold earrings, a steel-trimmed laptop bag. But her eyes softened when she hugged me, like no time had passed at all. I saw the post, she said, sliding into the booth. And I saw the comments. You okay? I nodded, though I wasn't sure. Depends on the hour. I mean it, Nora. I'm not just here for moral support. I'm a civil litigator now. I work on contract disputes, misuse of funds, defamation, inheritance claims. She sipped her coffee and raised an eyebrow. Sound familiar? I reached into my tote and handed her the silver USB drive. Chloe's, I said. Left in the kitchen. I copied the contents. She plugged it into her laptop immediately, fingers moving fast. As the files opened, talk points, garage.x, narrative slides, brand deck. She skimmed quickly, then leaned back in her seat. This is good, she said. It's not court admissible on its own, but it paints intent. The fact that they documented it, that's not just carelessness. It's arrogance. I felt a rush of heat rise up my neck. They've always thought I wouldn't do anything, that I'd just swallow it. Well, they're wrong, Tessa said. But we'll need more. Bank statements, email threads, proof of the money you transferred for your dad's surgery, any texts or voicemails where they acknowledged it. I have some emails, I replied. Sparse, but enough to trace the wires. Good. We'll start with a formal letter. Request for reconciliation and financial clarification. It's not aggressive. Just enough to shake the tree. Her words were clinical, precise. I envied her confidence. And then? I asked. If they ignore it, we escalate. There are consequences for misappropriating money, especially if the person transferring it did so in good faith. You're not trying to sue your family for revenge. You're demanding accountability. That's the difference. She said it so clearly that I almost believed it myself. Tessa reached across the table, resting her hand lightly on mine. We're not promising a win, but we're not staying silent either. This is your move, Nora. For the first time in weeks, I felt like the ground wasn't tilting beneath me. I wasn't in the garage anymore. I wasn't in the shadows, waiting for someone to recognize the hurt. I was acting. As we packed up to leave, she said, I'll draft the letter tonight. You'll have the first version by tomorrow. And Nora, when we send it, you don't owe anyone an explanation. The truth will speak for itself. I nodded, gripping the USB drive tighter in my palm. I stepped out into the sunlight, blinking as if seeing the town again for the first time. This will be a game that my sisters didn't think I would dare to start. They say knowledge is power, but Chloe forgot who coded her backend. It was almost midnight. The only light in the apartment came from my laptop, casting long shadows across the kitchen counter where I sat, hunched over the keyboard, tea gone cold beside me. The silence was thick, broken only by the occasional ping of a message from Tessa, who was still up, still working. I hadn't touched Chloe's website in over 3 years. Back then, she was still rising, still sweet-talking potential sponsors and chasing after her first influencer deal. I was her techie sister, the one who could stretch a few $100s into a fully functional e-commerce platform. She had no budget, no design plan, just a list of demands and a timeline of yesterday. I built it anyway. Nights and weekends between shifts and deadlines. And when she finally launched her brand, all glossy and full of pastel confidence, she barely remembered to say thank you. But she never asked me to revoke admin access. And I never offered. Tonight, I typed in the old credentials. My fingers hovered a second longer than necessary. Then I hit enter. The dashboard loaded. It was all still there. Some of the formatting had changed and there were new plugins, but the structure was the same. Front end for public browsing, a custom backend I'd created to help her track sales, ad spend, influencer outreach, and most importantly, payments. I moved slowly. No sudden changes, no opening anything suspicious. Just a quiet scan of the metadata, the file logs, and the hidden folders I'd embedded for backups. That's when I found it. A section labeled Consultant Payments, tucked inside a folder named Outreach Legacy. The naming was odd. Too vague. Too clean. I opened one of the invoices and stopped breathing. Billed to Ellison Legacy Fund Payment Address, 109 Bramblewood Drive, my parents' private home. Recipient, CE Media Consulting, Chloe's brand alias. The invoice was for $12,800 for brand architecture consultation and media alignment campaigns. All billed to a family foundation I had helped seed 2 years ago with a portion of my communications contract bonuses. Back then, it had been framed as a fund for family emergencies, health costs, and education. But here it was, paying Chloe to market herself. I messaged Tessa immediately. Me. I think I found it. She's billing the family fund. Tessa. Attach screenshots, pull log files, save timestamps. I opened the raw logs, screenshot each one, copied them into a secure folder. There was even a memo in the metadata of one of the PDFs, likely written by her assistant. Silent entry approved. Reimburse from Nora's legacy gifts? Budget line adjusted. I sat back, blinking at the screen. Legacy gifts. That's what they called the money I gave when I didn't even have enough to replace my broken water heater. I thought I was helping Mom and Dad fix the porch, cover medical bills. But here Chloe had siphoned it, quietly, cleanly, into her personal PR campaign. Tessa, I typed, this isn't just unethical. It's theft. She replied fast. Tessa, it's evidence. Don't touch anything else. Just archive, document, and let me walk you through chain of custody tomorrow. If this checks out, we escalate. You okay? I wasn't sure how to answer. My hands were steady now. My pulse had slowed. A part of me had shifted into something harder, colder. I minimized the files, encrypted the backup, and wrote a short note on paper for myself. Don't forget who you are. Don't let them write you out. The silence of the apartment wrapped around me again, but it no longer felt suffocating. Chloe, I didn't just underestimate you. I let you have all the traces I left behind. Tessa mailed the letter on Monday. By Tuesday night, Chloe posted a cryptic Instagram story. Jealousy is a disease. The envelope was heavy in my hands that morning. Tessa had printed it on the firm's cream-colored letterhead, sealed it in an embossed envelope, and handed it to me like a loaded gun. It was addressed to the Ellison residence, my childhood home, where Chloe still held court like a second queen. Inside was a cease and desist letter demanding an itemized explanation of how the $15,000 I'd transferred over 3 years had been spent. Tessa's language was clear but calm, legal but not yet hostile. It was the first formal move, a polite warning shot. Make a copy, she had said. One for your records, one for them. This isn't about drama, it's about record keeping. Still, my heart pounded when I slipped it into the mailbox. Something about the act felt final, like lighting a fuse. By evening, the tremors had reached Chloe. I didn't hear it from her. Of course not. She wouldn't lower herself to call me directly. But her fingers did the talking. That night, she posted a photo to her Instagram story. A crystal flute of champagne raised against the backdrop of the newly renovated patio. Her caption, in pink cursive, "Jealousy is a disease. Get well soon." She didn't tag me. She didn't need to. Everyone who had seen my Facebook post knew exactly who the target was. I watched the story twice, then set my phone down without reacting. Tessa messaged me 10 minutes later. Tessa. She's rattled. Me. That's her response? Tessa. For now. People like Chloe don't show fear. They perform confidence. The next morning, I received an email from my mother. It was short. Cold. Nora, what is this about letters? You're overreacting. This isn't the way to resolve family matters. Talk to Chloe. No concern, no questions. Just the same tone they always used when I tried to draw a line. I was being dramatic. Sensitive. Ungrateful. I didn't reply. But others did. My Facebook inbox showed a new message request. From a private account with no profile picture. The username was just a set of initials. JLM43. I hesitated, then clicked. JLM43. You're not the first she's done this to. The words sat there like a whisper in the dark. No greeting, no signature. I stared at the screen for several seconds, unsure whether it was a troll or something real. Then my fingers began to type. Me. Tell me what you know. There was no reply. Not yet. But I didn't close the window. Later that night, I checked Chloe's Instagram again. The story was gone, but a new one had taken its place. A boomerang video of her laughing with a man in a designer suit, clinking glasses under the fairy lights. The caption, thriving. Always. Tessa had warned me. This will not be linear. They'll try to bury you in noise. But I'd already been buried once, locked in a garage, ignored in a crowd, erased from the family narrative. Now, I had leverage. Evidence. A witness? Maybe. I had questions, and for the first time, someone might be willing to answer them. I refreshed the inbox. Still no response from JLM43. But something had shifted. The story was no longer just mine. I copied the message and sent it to Tessa. She called within seconds. Someone's cracking, she said. It always starts this way, with whispers. Don't chase. Just wait. Let them come. And I would. Because if Chloe thought that letter was the climax, she had no idea what was coming next. The fund in my father's name had no board, no oversight. And somehow, Chloe was the only active signer. The bank smelled the same as it had 20 years ago, back when I used to hold Dad's hand while he signed papers and shook hands like he was sealing history. Now, I sat across from a stranger, trying not to let my voice tremble. Mr. Dawes looked older than I remembered. His temples gray, his glasses thicker, but his handshake was still firm, practiced. He offered me a seat and a thin folder, marked, Ellison Legacy Fund, Internal History. He cleared his throat. I understand you're requesting a historical review of the fund usage and structure. Under privacy regulations, I can't provide transaction-level data without court authority, but I can confirm administrative details. I nodded. That's all I need for now. He opened the folder, flipping to a summary page. The Ellison Legacy Fund, he began, was registered in early 2019. Initial funding, $62,000. Additional deposits over time. As of today, the active signatory listed is Chloe Ellison. I swallowed. Just her? He adjusted his glasses. Yes. Your father set it up under the idea that it was for future family development. Education, health, or entrepreneurship? I stared at the page. The setup was simple. A single signer, no external review, no trustee board, not even a stipulation for equal disbursement. Just one name at the bottom of every authorization form. But wasn't it meant to serve all three children? I asked. Dawes hesitated. That was the verbal understanding, I believe. But legally, only one beneficiary was ever named. Your sister. I exhaled slowly. My jaw clenched, but I stayed calm. There it was, in neat black ink, itemized entries. Marketing expense, CE Media Campaign. Training seminar, CE Brand Vision Retreat. Emergency wardrobe stipend. All signed with one name. One fee, dated 6 months after I'd sent money for Dad's supposed knee surgery, read, Brand Image Consultant, reimbursed via legacy account. Amount, $4,200. It was a fund in my father's name, seeded by our shared last name, but I was never even notified of its creation. Mr. Dawes? I asked. Was there ever a second signatory? Anyone else on the account at any point? Number your mother requested the paperwork list, only one. He paused. There was a note added in 2020. Following internal family discussion, only Chloe will execute disbursements moving forward. I stared at the folder. 2020. The same year we had that argument when I told my mother I was tired of being the shadow sibling. She had said nothing about a fund, nothing about being excluded. Dawes leaned back. I assumed that's what the family agreed on. I looked up and met his eyes. What would you think if I said I wasn't invited to discuss the family fund? His face shifted slightly. A crease formed between his brows. Then I would say, you have grounds to ask more questions. I closed the folder gently. Outside, the sky was overcast, gray light filtering through the lobby windows like judgment. When I got back to the car, Tessa was waiting on the line. Well? She asked. They built the fund on my name, my father's name, but they locked me out before it even began. Tessa didn't respond right away. Then, that's enough to move forward with a formal inquiry. If we want to press it civilly, this is a strong base. Abuse of familial trust, intentional exclusion, misrepresentation. I said nothing. Because in that moment, I didn't want legal strategy. I wanted truth. I wanted the world to know that behind the glossy family photos, the champagne toasts, and Chloe's motivational posts was a ledger full of lies, and I was going to read every single line. It took Chloe exactly 4 days to get a lawyer and bring up the therapy sessions I had in college. The conference room smelled faintly of burnt coffee and printer ink. I sat on one side of the long table, Tessa beside me with a yellow legal pad and her phone set to silent. Across from us sat a younger man in a gray suit, impeccably pressed, expressionless. Chloe's lawyer. His name was Aaron Keating, and he introduced himself with the kind of measured tone people use when they know they've come armed. We're here in good faith, he began, unfolding a slim folder, to clarify misunderstandings between members of the Ellison family. But I must state that we're concerned about Ms. Nora Ellison's capacity to maintain objectivity in this matter. I blinked. Excuse me? Keating slid the folder across the table. Inside were 3 pages. The letterhead belonged to a student wellness center I hadn't thought about in years. The records indicate that you were in outpatient therapy in 2015 for generalized anxiety disorder with a history of panic episodes. These were disclosed voluntarily, according to our understanding, and they suggest that emotional instability may color your interpretation of events. Tessa didn't touch the folder. Her voice, though tight, was steady. Let's pause there. Are you attempting to imply that my client's history of anxiety disqualifies her from raising financial concerns? Keating didn't blink. I'm stating that her prior struggles may affect her credibility in assessing motives or outcomes. Tessa leaned forward. Unless your client is filing for conservatorship or declaring Ms. Ellison incompetent in a court of law, which, for the record, would be absurd, then those records are not only irrelevant, but potentially illegally obtained. Medical privacy laws are very clear. He shrugged, casual. We didn't obtain anything illegally. Ms. Ellison shared those details with her sister years ago. That sister kept a backup. I felt my stomach twist. Shared. Not documented, not authorized. Just spoken aloud in the privacy of a dorm room. Chloe and I used to lie awake at night, sharing secrets like currency. She'd stroked my hair after I had a panic attack, made tea, told me I wasn't broken. And now? She kept a backup? I repeated. Keating's expression didn't change. Chloe believes in being thorough. Tessa finally picked up the folder, scanned the top page, then looked at me. This is personal. It's emotional warfare. And honestly, it just told me more about her than about you. My mouth was dry. She saved it. All these years? Tessa nodded. She weaponized it. The rest of the meeting blurred. Keating tried to steer the conversation back to family reconciliation, suggesting that Nora drop her demand for a financial audit in favor of a healing process. Tessa shut that down with 3 crisp sentences about fiduciary duty, trust violations, and the possibility of an injunction if Chloe continued to circulate private material. We walked out without shaking hands. In the parking garage, the air was cooler. I leaned against the hood of Tessa's car, still holding the folder, my fingers shaking. She remembered everything, I whispered. Not because she cared, but because she knew one day she'd use it. Tessa rested her hand on my shoulder. People like her don't just want to win. They want to erase any version of you that they can't control. I looked out toward the street, where families were strolling past cafes and bookstores, oblivious. How many other people had Chloe done this to? How many stories had been rewritten with her at the center? Flawless, untouchable. Back in college, I thought she was the only person who truly understood me. I thought being vulnerable meant being loved. I thought I was the only one who was hurt. Turns out I was the only one who didn't know how far they went. I went back into the folder. There was one video file I hadn't opened before, and it wasn't hers. The room was silent except for the low hum of my laptop. The silver flash drive, now scratched from repeated handling, clicked softly as I pushed it deeper into the USB port. My heart beat faster with each folder I opened, scanning names, timestamps, extensions. Most files were benign. PDFs of promotional budgets, invoices, a folder for Instagram presets labeled Brand Mood. But then I saw it, buried under a folder called Archives MISC, a small video file with a name that stopped me cold. Dad, October 2021. I didn't move at first. I just stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the trackpad. I remembered that month vividly. It was when my father stopped returning my calls altogether. The shift was sudden. At the time, I told myself he was just tired. But a part of me had always felt something else happened, something I wasn't meant to know. I clicked. The screen flickered to life and my father appeared. The camera angle was tilted slightly, suggesting he'd set it up himself. He was sitting at his desk, the same one in his study that had remained locked since his passing. His face looked older than I remembered, wrinkles sharper, skin a little grayer. But his eyes were clear. If you're watching this, he began, I assume things didn't go the way I'd hoped. My breath caught in my throat. This is for my children, he continued. All 3 of you. The Ellison Legacy Fund was meant to support you equally. No single party should have authority to override the others. I froze. He leaned forward, resting his arms on the desk. There's a letter, handwritten. It's in my deposit box at the Wellspring branch downtown. Inside that envelope is the original intent memo for the fund. If anything ever happens, if anyone tries to claim sole control, you bring that letter forward. His eyes softened. I know things haven't been easy, Nora. I'm sorry. I paused the video. My hands were trembling. Dad knew. He knew I was being pushed away. And more than that, he had tried to protect me. He had anticipated betrayal. The problem wasn't that no one left me a way back in. The problem was someone had actively buried the path. I hit play again. If Chloe is the only one listed on the fund now, then something went wrong. I never signed over full access. He coughed, a dry, rasping sound that made me flinch. If I'm not here when you see this, find Tessa Green. She'll know what to do. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding. The laptop screen glowed like a silent witness in the dark room. The video ended, and for a moment I sat motionless, letting the gravity of what I'd just seen settle into my bones. 5 months before Chloe threw her backyard launch party, Dad had recorded this. 5 months before she billed the fund for strategic branding investments and claimed it was hers to manage. I checked the file metadata. Creation date, October 17th, 2021. No edits, no forwarding address, no signs it had ever been opened before. Had Chloe even known it was here? Or had she copied everything blindly, too arrogant to check what she was saving? Either way, the mistake was hers. And now I had more than screenshots. I had testimony. I reached for my phone with a shaky hand and opened my call list. Tessa's name sat at the top. The time read 1:06 a.m., but I didn't care. She answered on the third ring. Nora? I swallowed. We need an urgent warrant. Chloe smirked as her lawyer called me emotional and unwell. Then the judge leaned forward and said, "Let's watch the video." The words hung in the courtroom like a thunderclap. For the first time since I entered the building, I saw a flicker of doubt on Chloe's face. It was quick, almost imperceptible. But I knew that look. It was the same one she wore in high school when she got caught cheating on an ethics exam. She'd brushed it off then too. But this time she wasn't in front of a teacher. She was in front of a judge. The courtroom was small. First hearing rooms usually were, but everything felt larger than life. The walls, once dull beige, now loomed. The soft shuffle of paper, the occasional cough, the distant hum of fluorescent lights. They all blurred into silence as Tessa stood, steady and calm. "Your Honor," she said, sliding the flash drive into the USB port of the courtroom's presentation system. "We have a piece of video evidence that directly contradicts the defendant's claim of sole authority over the Ellison Legacy Fund." Chloe's lawyer, a sleek man with a voice like ice water, barely turned his head. "Objection. This evidence hasn't been authenticated." Tessa didn't flinch. "The metadata has been preserved. The chain of custody is intact, and your client never denied its existence in the preliminary disclosures. We're happy to provide forensic verification." The judge gave a nod. "We'll view the video. If its contents warrant further review, we'll discuss admissibility afterward." The lights dimmed slightly as the screen came alive. My breath caught. There he was. My father sat at his old study desk, the light of his banker's lamp casting a halo around his thinning white hair. The date in the corner read, October 3rd, 2021. He looked tired, older than I remembered, but his voice was firm. "If you're watching this," he began, "I'm assuming something's gone wrong. I created the Ellison Legacy Fund for all 3 of my children. No single person should have control. Not Chloe, not Nora, not David. This was meant to be equal." A pause. Then he looked down, fiddled with a sealed envelope. "There's a handwritten letter, left with the bank's legal office. I want it opened if there's ever a dispute. You'll find clarity there." Chloe shifted in her seat. Her lawyer leaned in, whispering furiously, but she didn't react. Her fingers clenched slightly against the oak armrests. The room remained still except for my heartbeat pounding in my ears. "Let's pause there," the judge said calmly. Tessa clicked a button, freezing the video mid-frame. My father's face resolute. "Miss Ellison," the judge said, turning to Chloe, "is there any reason you failed to disclose this video?" Chloe blinked. I wasn't aware it was still on that drive. It was personal, just a note from my father." "A legal fund," Tessa cut in gently, "is not personal. It's fiduciary." The judge raised a hand. "Enough. I'm placing a temporary injunction on all transactions involving the Ellison Legacy Fund. I'll sign an order for handwriting analysis on the signatures submitted for fund withdrawals. This case is no longer just civil. It borders on criminal fraud. A quiet gasp rippled through the room. Chloe's mouth opened, then closed. Her usual charm, her polished calm, it faltered. Tessa leaned toward me and whispered, "That was the first domino." I didn't respond. I stood instead, slowly, meeting Chloe's eyes across the room. She'd dressed for power. Black blazer, pristine blouse, heels that clicked confidently on marble floors. But now that poise cracked. "You always liked playing God," I said, my voice clear. "How does it feel to be questioned under oath?" The original was missing from the safe deposit box, but banks keep records. Chloe forgot that. The steel door of the Wellspring Branch's archival vault hissed as it opened, releasing a blast of sterile air that smelled faintly of ink, paper, and cold marble. I stood beside Tessa, my breath shallow, heart pounding. Not from fear, but from something sharper. Anticipation wrapped in fury. The vault attendant, a young man in a blue blazer with a badge reading "Document Custodian," gestured toward a long table. On it lay a single white folder, sealed, edges crisp. "This is the copy from October 5th, 2021, he said. "Per protocol, all client handovers are scanned and time-stamped into our secure backup. This one was flagged as Legacy Fund Private Statement." Tessa accepted the folder gently, handling it like a surgeon would a scalpel. She laid it flat, opened it, and tilted it so we both could see. Inside was a scan of a handwritten letter, my father's handwriting, familiar even in the slanting ink and faded loops. It had been digitized, but the personality still bled through. Sharp angles for serious thoughts, rounded curves in my name. My throat tightened before I even read the words. "To whom it may concern," it began. "This is my written directive regarding the Ellison Legacy Fund." The letters were clean, purposeful. I have 3 children, Nora, Chloe, and Max. Each has strengths. Nora has a sharp business sense. Chloe is creative. Max, compassionate. My hope is that the 3 of them, together, will manage the fund and build something stronger than what I leave behind. I felt the sting of tears behind my eyes, but I didn't blink. Tessa whispered, This makes everything different." I nodded, silent. "I have instructed that no individual has the right to override the decisions of the others. Any unilateral action is to be considered a breach of trust, not my intent." There was no ambiguity. The letter was signed, dated, and carried the notary stamp of the bank. A faint embossed seal sat in the corner, untouched and unedited. Tessa's eyes scanned every inch. He covered all the bases. This was meant to stand even if something was forged later. We turned to the final lines. "If this letter ever surfaces in the context of dispute, I ask the court to respect my true intent. And if someone takes control without discussion, I trust that Nora will be the first to notice that something is wrong." The silence that followed was profound. I stood there, reading that last sentence again. Then again. His faith in me, quiet, unstated all those years, was right here, in black and white. I remembered the day Chloe had looked me in the eye and said, there was nothing in the box, just a blank note like he didn't finish. She had lied. She had known. The bank manager, a silver-haired man with tired eyes and steady hands, stepped forward. "I was here that day," he said. "Your father insisted on watching us scan it. I remember because he asked if he could sit while he waited. His knees were bothering him." Tessa nodded. "We'll need a certified copy, chain of custody documentation, and an affidavit of process. We'll prepare it today." As they disappeared into a back office, Tessa turned to me, her voice low. "This isn't just a letter. It's a legal nail in their coffin. And a personal one, too." I said nothing for a long time. Just looked at the words on the page one more time. The guilt that had haunted me, wondering if I'd failed him, or failed to ask the right questions, faded into something else. Conviction, strength. He believed in me. And now, with this letter, the world would finally see the truth. I whispered in my head, and now the whole world will know. Chloe's assistant used to roll her eyes when I walked into the room. Today she said, "Ma'am, would you like coffee?" The courtroom hallway buzzed like a hive. People whispered not because they pitied me, but because they recognized me now. A news crew stood outside the courthouse doors, cameras poised, hoping for a glimpse of Chloe, the once unquestioned face of Ellison Charm, now avoiding eye contact and ducking into stairwells. I walked past them all. My heels echoed against the linoleum as I passed Chloe's assistant, Marcy, who used to talk over me, correct me in meetings, once even took my chair during a brand consultation. She rose when she saw me, visibly tense, coffee tray trembling slightly. "Ma'am," she said, voice quieter than I remembered. "Would you like coffee?" I blinked. She glanced toward the press, then back at me. "You deserve better than what they did." I didn't respond, not because I wasn't grateful, but because I wasn't used to this reversal yet. For years, I had been the shadow they edited out, the name that never made it into print, the sister who didn't fit the image. Now I was the one with court records, archived emails, video files, and a father's last letter, while Chloe clung to crumbling PR facades. Inside the courtroom, Chloe's chair sat empty. Her lawyer had filed for her to be absent, due to emotional distress. Tessa smirked. That's one way to say she's cornered. I nodded, placing the press statement we had prepared inside my bag. I wasn't going to read it aloud. Not today. But the very fact that it existed, that I had been invited to respond publicly, was something unimaginable just weeks ago. We exited after the brief procedural update. No new statements from the judge, but the freezing order on the fund remained, and forensic analysts were now tracing the routing of internal fund transfers. Back outside, I was approached by someone unexpected, a familiar face from 5 years ago. "Hey," he said. "You probably don't remember me, Daniel Kerrigan? We worked on the Wexley proposal in 2017. I remembered. He'd been one of the senior consultants who once dismissed every pitch I made. "Too ambitious for someone not on the board," he'd once said. But now his tone had changed. "You've been on my feet a lot lately. Look, I was wondering if you'd be open to revisiting that project. I mean, from your current position." I let him speak, eyes level. When he finished, I extended a tight smile. "Send a draft. Tessa can vet it." He blinked. "Right. Of course, ma'am." The second time that word was used today. I didn't think I cared for titles until now. Not because they fed my ego, but because they reminded me that respect, once denied, had finally come. Not because I asked for it, but because I earned it. Later that day, I stood in the bathroom of the courthouse, hands gripping the marble sink, eyes locked onto my reflection. No makeup artist, no flattering light, no soft background music like Chloe's lifestyle videos. Just me, skin slightly dull from sleepless nights, hair pulled back in a simple bun. But I looked powerful. Not loud, not angry. Just real. The kind of power that didn't need to shout to be heard. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't even feel vindicated. I felt centered. Like all the pieces had started falling into place. Not because someone gave them to me, but because I fought for them. A knock at the door pulled me out of the moment. It was Tessa, holding her phone in one hand, a gleam in her eye. "They're printing the letter in full, with your father's signature. The press wants to run an editorial piece. Legacy and Lies, the Ellison story." I took a breath, eyes still on the mirror. "Next week we go public," Tessa said. "You ready to own the narrative?" My mother cried, saying she never meant to choose sides. I believed her. But I didn't forget. The garden hadn't changed. The same stone bench curved beneath the blooming branches of the pear tree my father had planted in their 25th year of marriage. The scent of overripe blossoms hung in the air like memory. Sweet, familiar, a little suffocating. She sat quietly, hands folded over her knees, her once pristine nails chipped and bare. No rings today? No pearls? Just the simple cotton cardigan I remembered from my college break visits, when she'd hug me like an obligation and ask too quickly about my future. "I didn't know if you'd come," she said. "I came because Tessa said you asked. That's all." She nodded, a slow, brittle gesture. For a few minutes, we listened to the wind play through the garden. Far in the background, traffic buzzed faintly, another reminder that life continued, indifferent and unchanged, outside of family collapse. "I wasn't brave," she began, staring at the ground. "I thought staying silent would keep the peace. I thought if I didn't get involved, the two of you would work it out." "You didn't stay silent," I said. "You let her sit me in a garage. You looked right at me and chose not to stop her." She flinched. "I didn't mean to choose her," she whispered. "But you did." She reached into her pocket, pulled out a folded napkin, clutched like a child with a secret. I thought she might offer me a handkerchief, a sign of maternal habit. But what emerged was something else entirely. A necklace. Thin gold chain, slightly tarnished. At the center, a locket no bigger than my thumbnail. I knew it before she spoke. My father's. "He left this for you," she said. "He gave it to me 2 weeks before the stroke. He said, 'This belongs to Nora. Give it to her when the time is right.'" I didn't reach for it. Not immediately. "Then why did you keep it?" I asked. She closed her eyes. "Because I was afraid. Afraid that if I gave it to you, Chloe would see me as weak. I thought I could handle both of you. I thought love meant keeping everything smooth." "That's not love," I said softly. "That's fear." She nodded again, slower this time. A tremor in her jaw betrayed the quiet storm beneath her composed voice. "You were always strong, Nora," she said. "But I didn't know how to love that. I only knew how to love soft girls, like I was taught, like I became." I didn't offer forgiveness. That wasn't what she asked for, and it wasn't mine to give today. But I took the necklace. Its weight surprised me. Not heavy, but undeniable. Solid. Like history. Like inheritance. Like the pain I'd carried in silence for too long. "I remember that night," I told her. "The chairs were plastic. The garage light kept flickering. And when I dropped my glass, no one looked up. Not even you." Tears rimmed her eyes, but she didn't try to justify it. "I thought it would pass," she whispered, "that we'd all laugh about it someday." I looked at the garden. The tree. The blossoms falling slowly, silently to the ground. "From now on," I said, "I live to respect myself. I'm not here to fix things. I'm not here to be chosen. I'm done waiting." The silence that followed wasn't hostile. It was quiet. Bare. Necessary. "I still love you," she said. "I know," I replied, "but I won't stay where love asks me to disappear." She pressed the locket into my hand, fingers trembling. "Even if you don't wear it, I want you to have it." I squeezed the necklace in my hand. "I won't wear it, but I will keep it, in its rightful place." My mother cried, saying she never meant to choose sides. I believed her, but I didn't forget. The garden hadn't changed much since that night. The trimmed hedges curved like the spines of secrets kept too long, and the pear tree, the one my father planted during their 25th anniversary, bloomed as if nothing had happened beneath its branches. But I had changed, and nothing about this place felt warm anymore. She was already sitting on the stone bench when I arrived. Her hands were folded neatly in her lap, a tissue crumpled between her fingers. No jewelry, no makeup. Just the soft cardigan I remembered from college. A threadbare thing that had outlasted most of our spoken affections. I didn't speak first. I let the quiet stretch until the bird song felt too loud. "When they told me you were coming," she said finally, "I didn't believe it." "I didn't come to fix anything," I said. "Just to finish it." She winced. Her face, older than I remembered, pinched around the eyes. I know I wasn't what you needed. No, I said. You weren't. She looked down. I used to tell myself it wasn't my fault, that you and Chloe were just too different, that one day you'd come back together and I wouldn't have to choose. But you did, I said. You chose her. Tears filled her eyes. I didn't mean to. I was afraid. She's always been louder, always made her needs known. You were quiet. You never asked for anything. That doesn't mean I didn't need anything, I replied. I know that now, she whispered. Too late, I suppose. We sat in silence for a long moment. Wind passed through the trees, shaking loose a few blossoms that drifted gently to the stone path. I think about that night a lot, I said. The garage, the plastic chair, the laughter I could hear through the walls. And when I dropped my glass and no one looked over, not even you. Her hand trembled against the tissue. I thought Chloe was right, that if we didn't make space for tension, it would go away. I looked at her then, really looked. She wasn't cruel. She wasn't calculating like Chloe. But she was complicit. In her fear, in her silence, in the way she'd let me vanish piece by piece to keep peace. You once told me, I said slowly, that women are made to endure. She blinked. I don't remember that. I do. I was 9. I cried when Dad forgot to come to my school play. You held me and said, "We're made to endure, sweetheart." Like that was the highest virtue I could hope to carry. A long exhale left her chest, shaking. I don't believe that anymore, I said. I'm not made to endure. I'm made to draw lines. She didn't argue. She just nodded, almost as if relieved to hear it out loud. I'm not asking for an apology, I continued, or love, or a redo. I'm not here for reconciliation. I'm here to say that from this moment on, I live to respect myself. She swallowed hard. I want to show you something. From her purse, she pulled out a small velvet pouch. She opened it, revealing a gold chain, slightly tarnished with a heart-shaped locket in the center. My breath caught. This was your father's, she said. He gave it to me a week before the stroke. He said, he wanted you to have it. Why didn't you give it to me? I asked. I was scared, she whispered. Chloe had already begun managing things. She told me you wouldn't care, that you'd moved on, and I believed her. I didn't take it right away. I stared at the locket, trying to remember the sound of his laugh, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. How strange that a tiny object could hold so much absence. Did he say anything else? I asked. She nodded. He said, Nora will know what this means. I reached out and took it gently, feeling the cool metal settle into my palm. Its weight was small, but it echoed. I won't wear it, I said, closing my fingers around it. But I'll keep it, in its rightful place. She lowered her eyes. That's more than I deserve. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. A vibration buzzed in my coat pocket. Tessa's name on the screen. I didn't check the message. Not yet. I needed this moment to end on my own terms. As I stood, my mother looked up at me, eyes rimmed with old pain and new understanding. You're not the same girl who left this house, she said. No, I said, and I'm not the one who's coming back either. I turned and walked away from the bench, the blossoms crunching faintly beneath my boots. Behind me, the tree rustled again. It used to be a symbol of their love. Now it was just wood and bloom. Beautiful, but not sacred. I had buried enough in this garden. Now it was time to grow elsewhere. No garage, no folding chairs, no whispered pity. Just a rooftop, a guest list, and my name on the banner. The sun was setting over the city skyline, painting the clouds in shades of copper and blush. The rooftop shimmered with soft string lights, woven between potted olive trees and carefully arranged clusters of chairs. Not the collapsible kind, but plush, welcoming seats in cream and gold. I walked slowly through the space, taking it in. There were waiters with trays of sparkling water and lemon tarts. A string quartet played near the far railing. My name, printed in soft serif on a white silk backdrop, fluttered gently in the breeze. It said, Nora Ellison Foundation, Launch Gala. No one here called me cold. No one whispered behind my back or avoided my eye. They called me ma'am. They smiled when I approached. They made room. A year ago today, I'd been ushered into a garage, left with silence and folding chairs and a door that locked from the outside. This year, I chose every detail of the celebration. It wasn't an anniversary of marriage. It was the anniversary of my freedom. Tessa approached, holding 2 glasses of sparkling cider. No champagne? I smiled. No need. I want to remember everything. She clinked her glass against mine. You earned this. Music swelled behind us. A few of our guests, donors, journalists, colleagues from my consulting firm, gathered near the podium. Tessa motioned for me to follow. Your turn. I stepped onto the low platform. A hush fell over the crowd. My heart beat a little too loudly, but my voice didn't tremble. Thank you all for being here, I began. 1 year ago, I stood in the back of a garden, seated far from the rest of my family. No one knew I was there. Most didn't care. That night changed me. A murmur passed through the crowd. I let it settle. This, I gestured to the space, isn't about revenge. It's about reclamation. About naming what we lose and taking it back on our own terms. Tessa smiled and a few heads nodded. In the back, a former colleague from my tech consulting days wiped a tear from her cheek. I used to think being excluded was a sign of failure, but now I understand. It was the beginning of clarity. Sometimes being pushed out means being freed. Soft applause. I paused. The Nora Foundation, I said, will provide grants and legal support to women who've been pushed to the margins of their own families. Whether through manipulation, financial control, or erasure, your stories matter. You matter. And I want you to know, you're not alone. This time, the applause was loud. As I stepped off the stage, a reporter moved toward me holding a small mic. Ms. Ellison, if you could say one thing to your family, what would it be? I smiled. Thank you for reminding me who I am by trying so hard to erase me. The silence that followed was charged. Not awkward, not confrontational, just full. The kind of quiet that arrives when truth lands somewhere it was long denied. The rooftop party continued. Laughter, footsteps, glasses clinking. Tessa handed out information cards to a small circle of women in tailored suits. One of them had once worked for Chloe. Another used to work in the same bank where my father's letter had been nearly buried. I stood by the railing and looked out at the city. I had no need for vindication anymore. This wasn't about who believed me. It was about who I believed myself to be. My phone buzzed in my clutch. I pulled it out and froze at the screen. Chloe. For a moment, I thought of ignoring it. Let it disappear into the stream of messages I no longer checked. But something compelled me to read. It was just one sentence. I lost, but I see it now. No apology, no request, just acknowledgement. I turned off the phone and slid it back into my bag. I didn't need to respond. The wind rose gently, rustling the banner behind me. This wasn't closure. It was opening. The ones who once silenced her now stepped aside when she walked in. Nora didn't need to shout to be heard. She simply stood tall, and the truth did the rest. Justice, when paired with patience and proof, can dismantle even the most polished lies. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but it resonates powerfully once it's heard. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Comment 1 if you connected with Nora's journey, Or 2 if you felt something was still missing.